Welcome back, everyone. Time for our final keynote today with Jim Rotman, former global head of culture and inclusion at Volvo. And our subject is the power of belonging in a sustainable world. Hi, Jim. How are you doing?
Hey, how are you doing?
Are you doing all right?
Yeah, doing good.
Fabulous, amazing. Well, I'll hand straight over to you. The stage is yours.
Great, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So, again, Jim Rotman. I've been in the DEI space for practice for probably about 15 years now. Originally with American Express out of New York, and then working with a biotech company in San Francisco for their global head, and took over as the first-time global head of diversity for Roche Pharmaceutical out of Switzerland.
Thank you.
From there, I was there 5 or 6 years, and then did some consulting and with some biotech companies, and then ended up over the last 3 years as the global head of culture, inclusion, and belonging at Volvo Cars. And in the process of transitioning into my own consulting firm, because I'm passionate about a few things in my life here, and I'm at a point where I really want to pursue those. And one of them is ethical leadership. But the other one is about the power of belonging. And after having been in this for 15 years, I'm starting to see something that I haven't seen before, that this can actually make a big difference. And so there's the evolution of belonging. And I think it's important to talk about that and talk about exactly kind of how we got to where we were. So I'm going to tell a story. So imagine sitting around a fire with your early ancestors. Belonging wasn't just a nice to have. It was actually survival. So fast forward to today, and while we're not really hunting woolly mammoths anymore, but belonging remains just as crucial, but maybe for a different reason. It's evolved from a passive state, from my perspective, of being accepted to an actually active state. And that's what we're going to talk about. And it is both something that can help drive your personal and your global impact. Now, this evolution, of belonging tells us stories. Our ancestors, they understood that if you stuck together and you hunted together, you wouldn't perish. And ancient civilizations made it even more complex, trying to tie belonging to social structures, family lines, religious communities. But it was Abraham Maslow who was the first that really helped us understand belonging as a fundamental human right. And he placed it alongside the need for food, the need for water, and the need for safety. So think about that for a moment. Belonging isn't a luxury. It's essential as the air we breathe. And that's where it gets interesting from my perspective. Because as we got to the Industrial Revolution, it changed everything. Suddenly, people weren't just belonging to villages and to their families and their tribe. They're actually belonging to organizations and unions and professional groups. And then came the digital age, and geography no longer became a barrier. So we could belong to communities across the globe with just a single click. But something was missing. And despite all of our connectivity, people felt more isolated than ever. And why? And that's because we forgot about something crucial. And that's not just about having likes and having followers, but it's about belonging to something. And today we're witnessing a revolution, I believe, in how we think about belonging, that it's no longer something that happens to us. It's something we actively choose. Neuroscience shows us that belonging impacts our brains in the same way physical pain does. Organizational psychologists tell us that it's the key to engagement and innovation. But here's a real breakthrough for me, is that belonging isn't just about being included. It's about choosing. It's about choosing to connect. So let me share you an example of a company in Europe. And they had the right inclusion policies. And this is pretty typical of what you see. They had flexible work. They had encouraging diverse teams. They had cultural training. But that didn't cause belonging to happen. Real belonging emerged when employees started to make active choices, not passive choices. Engineers started to share their unfinished work with each other. Team members voluntarily adjusted meeting times for fasting colleagues. They created sustainability circles. And the difference? Well, inclusion opened the door, but belonging was the choice to walk through and actually start, as they would say, start dancing. So as we face global challenges like climate change and social division, belonging has never been more crucial. Conversations I'm having with people in the US, they're like, now with the new elections, where do I belong? How do I belong? Who do I belong with? So those are questions that happen even outside of the workplace. So it's evolved from just keeping us alive in the wilderness to hopefully keeping our planet sustainable over time. So that's what we're going to talk about, because I believe that belonging isn't just feeling connected as a way of hoping, but it's actually something that you choose to do. So what if belonging could be the foundation for teams, organizations, and anybody going through transformations or transitions or focused on sustainability? And I think this is where the real benefit is. And it's getting back to it being something that's important to the business. It's not an HR issue. It's not a people issue. It's a culture, and it's a business critical issue that if we have belonging, then we start to shift things. We start to shift to more of a shared purpose, a shared identity, longer term thinking, collective responsibility, value-based decisions, and a stronger organizational culture of collaboration. And we'll talk more about this as we go through the slides today. And I assume the slides will be shared. So if not, you can reach me at my email will be in the last of the slides, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Jim Rotman. So, there's a lot of rumors out there right now that DEI is going away. And I'm going to tell you that from my perspective, that's never going to happen. Because who are you hearing this from, that DEI is going away? Are you hearing it from women? Are you hearing it from people of color? Are you hearing it from people with disabilities? Are you hearing it from people who don't have the opportunity for the best educations or an education or even a healthy work environment? Are you hearing it from companies who care about sustainability? No, you're hearing about it from a very narrow group of people. And as humans, we'll always want to help those that are in need. And I want to be very honest about this, is that when belonging was first added to the DEI lexicon, I was very skeptical. The response I got from my business partners was, we're still working on diversity and understanding that. We now have equity, we have equality, we have inclusion, all these words, and now you want to add belonging? Like, why would you do that? It feels too HR, too kind of fluffy word. It doesn't feel like it's a business-driven word. So I was like, I'm not sure what it's for. And so it was explained to me earlier on is that diversity is a noun. It's a thing you can name. Inclusion is a verb. It's an action. It's something that you do. And belonging is a feeling. And I went with that for a while. But after a while, I realized that even though you might have a diverse workforce, and you might have leaders who are being inclusive by inviting you to meetings, letting you speak up, sometimes you just don't really feel like you belong. So it's something that you actually have, that most people were like, gee, I hope I feel like I belong when this is over. And for me, what I've seen is that if we take belonging from a passive feeling to an active verb, we can actually make a significant difference. So this is the new perspective. The traditional one has been belonging has been seen as a feeling. And we hope that we experience that if everything goes our way. The new perspective that I'm proposing, and actually have been working on over the last few years, is shifting belonging to an active decision to connect. And so the key message here is that you are the architect of your own belonging. You are the person who can make the decision that whether or not you want to belong. You're the one that can make the decision that I want to speak up. You're the one that can make a decision that connecting in a different way is important. And so I think the key word to this is, and if you wanted to take the word belonging and replace it, you could talk about it as deeper connections to the purpose of the organization, deeper connections to how it aligns to your own values, deeper connection to the team that you're on, the team that also has a responsibility in building and being active in building inclusion, and connecting that to the bigger social impact. I think those are exactly where you can go. So if you want to start with this perspective that belonging is an action, not just a feeling, it's like, where do you start? And starts with the individual. Like I said, that you're the architect of your own belonging. But where it really starts is with team. And that's where we were starting in the company. We're looking at not just the diversity of the team, not just creating an inclusive leader, but what we were actually trying to create was a team that had a strong sense of belonging. And so why does it start with a team? So let me go through a few things here. Well, first of all, as I talked about, humans are, as what you would say, evolved as tribal creatures. Our survival depended on groups. Our brains are wired for social connection, and individual skill is only valuable, usually in a group context. But even that, you need to go beyond that, why teams matter. Team belonging matters, is that, first of all, you need something to belong to. I think for me, that's like, yes, you just can't belong to yourself. You need to belong to something. And it's inherent in relationships and reciprocal actions. Teams can't exist in isolation. They exist with each other. And also teams need mutual engagement and recognition. So for an example, it's like a software development team, an individual coder might write the most brilliant code, but belonging emerges through code reviews where others engage in the work. Team members build on each other's idea, collective celebration of project success, and shared challenges of problem solving. And there's an amplifier effect that when individuals create something, there's a ripple across the team. So what I suggest is that if you start looking at belonging as that active verb, and you start seeing that deeper set of engagement, the set of creating a culture of collaboration, then starting with teams is probably the best way that you could absolutely possibly go. So what I put together to help me explain this to people and for me to actually put a program together that has some structure around it and gives people an idea of what we're trying to do. And I call it the EPIC framework. And what it's about is four key pieces. It's around embracing, it's about having purpose, it's about being interconnected, and it's about cultivating. And so if you're in your company and you're looking that you've done a lot of work around diversity, meaning that people understand the different aspects of diversity, people understand some of their unconscious bias aspects, people have started to learn more about inclusion and have started to take, whether it's inclusive leadership or inclusive nudges. I think those are all really good. I think where we are right now, though, if you really want to take it to the next level, is that you start to move to belonging. So if you look at it in these four areas, then you can start to figure out programs and processes and tools that would actually support this. So embrace in EPIC is starting with that, embracing the differences and authenticity as the foundation for belonging. Because people need to understand not only what you have in common, but what makes you unique. Everybody wants to belong to a team. Everybody wants to belong to something bigger, but they also want to be seen for what they have that is unique. I believe Catalyst did the research probably, 10 years ago on what is inclusion, what does this mean in a global context. And what they said, it's two pieces. One is that you need to belong, and then you need to figure out how to stand out. So nobody wants to be completely belonging because then you're just one of everybody. And you don't want to be the unique person because then you're on the out. And so what they want to do is that embracing is both embracing all the differences and the authentic aspects of everybody. And that's the foundation for starting belonging. The next is purpose. And purpose actually connects individuals to the larger organizational or team mission. And I think this is really critical. You can, in Volvo, we have over the last year really been focusing on getting the business to be highly efficient and increase our margins. It's a very tough world out there for EV cars. And so that was one of our ways to start to think about how do you connect individuals to the larger mission. And so we started talking about what does it mean to drive costs down? What does it mean to make good decisions? And so what we started to do is create this aspect of having people feel as though and understand and commit to being that part of that purpose. And almost like it's a family. How would you manage your own budget? How would you manage your family budget? How would you manage if you were helping your parents with their budget? And so you needed to take that bigger aspect that my role every single day has a bigger role to play in the bigger organization. The other is interconnectedness. And I think this is something that's different. Purpose is different than inclusion. Interconnectedness is another one that's different than inclusion. Because I can ask somebody to be included, I can ask somebody to come and join me, but that doesn't mean that they actually feel connected. And so it's about fostering and building really meaningful relationships and genuine connections. When I talk to people and ask them, what makes you feel that you belong? What makes you understand that you belong? It's that when people care about them, that they know who they are, they know what makes them tick a little bit. They know that if they didn't show up to work one day, they would reach out to find out, are you doing okay? Is everything okay? So there's this connection that there's a meaningful relationship around compassion and care. And the last is cultivate. And I think this is probably the one that has been the hardest, is about a true sense of belonging comes when employees feel that the organization is invested in their future. And there's always been this kind of balance between the power of the company to say, we hire you, you work for us, you do what we want you to do, and we decide if you stay, who gets promoted. And then there's the other side of it, which has been more recently, is the power of the employee to be able to say, I need more in this organization. I need more development. I need more resources. I can choose to work for somebody else. I need this aspect of you committing and cultivating me as much as I am committing and giving to you. And there's that mutual respect. So here's a real example. And I think this is important because it's not just philosophical, but it's an actual real thing. So the goal is to transform a multinational company into a true global organization. So instead of a series of companies that were in individual countries, it's to how do you create that belonging across diverse cultures, across that full context. So I'm sure that this is something that many companies have experienced. I experienced it at American Express or at Roche or at Volvo. And so this is what we did. And this is an example of how it was put together and the impact. So under the embrace of Epic is that we started to launch My Story Matters. At Volvo, we started to create the aspect of freedom to be, the freedom to be who you are. And we created programs around that and platforms where people could share their personal experiences. So they were starting to be able to show who they were. People were starting to understand the differences and appreciate who these people, where they came from, their life experiences, what mattered to them. We started to create some micro communities based on shared interests and backgrounds. And so people could start to get a little deeper. We call them culture cafes. And then we started to implement some other flexible policies. One happened to be on religious observances. It could be something else. For purpose, we started this aspect around sustainability living plans, which was to connect local actions to global sustainability. At Volvo, there's the For Life Fund that we started to roll out to start to connect global sustainability, global interests with local interests, so that we start to connect purpose at the individual level and at the local level with the global purpose. And then we looked at every product and started to define some social and environmental purpose. And then local teams also started to adapt that global purpose to their regional needs. The other was on interconnected relationships. So Global Connect was a program around virtual mentoring. So we started to have people connecting across the world. We had cross-cultural project teams. And then we also started to do digital collaboration in hubs in multiple time zones. The last company I was with Volvo, we had operations in Poland and Madrid and Slovakia, in the US, in China, in Europe. It was everywhere. And so we had hubs everywhere. So then that cultivate global potential. So we started to continue with our international assignments, which is a really good way to do it. But we started to do virtual leadership development across regions. And then we had some cultural mentoring. We would hold some events of where we had people from China would talk about the culture that they had and talk about what it was like to be there. And then we'd compare that to the culture in the US. And we would have a really open conversation about that. For this case study, and this wasn't Volvo, but this was another company, is that they ended up with a 28% increase in employee engagement, a 35% improvement in innovation metrics, and a 22% reduction in recruitment costs because of retention. From a cultural impact, and for this is important to me, is that they had 92% of employees feel a sense of belonging. 87% said that they would recommend the company as an employer, and 45% said that they thought there was an increase in cross-cultural collaboration. So for me, when I see these kind of results, and I think that diversity is important, it's not going away. Equity and equality is important, they're not going away. Being inclusive is still a foundation, but if we can get to belonging, then you can see these kind of results. So I know this is the last one at the end of the day. So I'm going to say this is kind of my last kind of key points is that I believe it's time to reframe belonging to being business critical in this time of transformation and transition. If they really want to get to where they're going, they need everybody rowing in the same direction. My recommendation is that if you want to start with something along belonging, you could use the EPIC framework. You could use another framework that you like. But it's to start with the most strategic teams in the organization. We were looking at, in our company, the R&D team, a lot of the most critical engineering, and we wanted them to be the most highly productive, highly performing team. And the other one was our design team. They were creating the new designs, the new look, the new feel, the new cars for the next 10 years. And we needed them to be the most innovative and the most cohesive team possible. And so we started with those two strategic teams. So as I end this, I want you to ask yourself, what active choices will I make today to create meaningful connections to purpose, to people, to the planet, to create an environment where I feel like I belong? So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and take any questions if people are interested.
Jim, thank you so much. That was incredibly interesting, and I think you've given our listeners a lot to work with. We have had some questions through. I'm aware we're running a little bit late, so we'll only be able to do a couple. But we've had one come through that's had quite a lot of upvotes as well, so I'm going to lead with that. Mark is asking, how can you actively measure belonging so that this data can enable belonging-driven decision-making?
Yeah, good. Yeah, absolutely. That's always a challenge, is measuring. So there's a couple of things that we looked at. One, we were using Glint. They actually have a question that says, I feel like I belong. That's one of their kind of foundational questions. But I was never thrilled with that question because it's like, I have no idea how to act on that because it's somebody's feeling. So what we started to do was ask questions about broader than inclusion. So we did ask about, do you feel respected? Do you still feel valued? Do you have the ability to speak up? But we started to look at connections in the company. How close do you feel connected to your peers? How close do you feel connected to your teams? We started to take a look at how close do you feel connected to the purpose and the mission of the organization. We also started to look at career development. And so do you feel like you have opportunities here? Do you feel like you have the opportunity to take on new assignments? Do you have the opportunity to volunteer or do something beyond what you're normally doing? Then we also started looking at, from a purpose perspective, our For Life fund, which is really around volunteering, is about increasing the commitment of people volunteering, because that For Life Fund was really focused on our core mission and our purpose around sustainability. And so how many organizations or how much regionally were people actually committing to do this? So you could create, we created a little mini index, but you could create your own. I'd be happy to share it with anybody. And you can weight it the way you want to. But the one I really liked was we started looking at patents and innovation and increases in that.
Amazing, thank you. I'm going to ask you one more question, but I am going to ask for a snappy response if that's okay. Leaning back to sort of sustainability roles in organizations, we've got a question that says, sustainability leads are often lone roles that engage with other teams. How do you suggest organizations and individuals improve belonging for these roles?
Well, that is, you have to find your tribe. Most diversity people, myself, are a team of one or two. And so you have to find who your tribe is. I found people for me, it was in the branding group. I found a close connection to it because they were so interested about creating a culture and a way for people to see the company as being innovative and unique. And so I wanted to do that also from our internal culture. And so I connected with people like in the brand. I connected with people in the communications, and these are people that cut across the organization too. So there's no right or wrong answer, but you have to find your tribe, and they may not be part of your core group.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. I feel like we could go through this for hours, but unfortunately we have reached the end of the event. But thank you for joining us, Jim.
Take care.